In the quiet and frozen lands of Alaska, where the snow never seemed to stop falling, there lived a man named Ethan Carter. Ethan was not like most people who chose to live in cities or towns. He liked being alone, far away from the noise and crowds. His home was a small wooden cabin surrounded by tall trees and endless fields of white snow. It was a simple life, but it suited him well. He spent his days fixing broken machines and tools for the nearby villagers, who often came to him with problems only he could solve. They called him the engineer, and though they didn't visit often because of the harsh weather, they always left grateful for his help. Ethan had grown used to the silence of the wilderness. The only sounds he heard were the howling wind, the crackling fire in his stove, and sometimes the distant calls of animals in the forest. But one night, something unusual happened, something that would change everything. It was late, and the temperature had dropped so low that even the air felt sharp against the skin. Ethan sat by the window, staring out at the endless expanse of snow. He sipped hot tea from a chipped mug, feeling the warmth spread through his body. Just as he was about to get up and close the shutters, he noticed movement outside. At first, he thought it might be a trick of the light or his tired eyes playing games with him, but then he saw it clearly. A large gray wolf stumbling toward his cabin, dragging something behind her. Ethan froze, his mug halfway to his lips. Wolves were not uncommon in this part of Alaska, but they usually stayed far away from humans. This one, however, was heading straight for him. As she drew closer, he realized she wasn't alone. Behind her were two smaller shapes, barely visible, against the snow. When she reached the porch, she collapsed, panting heavily, her sides heaving with effort. Ethan set down his mug and grabbed a flashlight, moving cautiously toward the door. He opened it just wide enough to see what was happening. The wolf looked up at him, her golden eyes filled with desperation. She nudged the two small bundles lying on the ground, pushing them closer to him. That's when Ethan realized they were pups. Two tiny wolf pups, their fur frosted over with ice, unmoving and silent. They looked like they were already dead, but the mother wolf refused to give up on them. She whimpered softly, her gaze fixed on Ethan, pleading without words. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. Helping a wild animal was risky, especially one as unpredictable as a wolf. But looking into her eyes, he saw something that made him pause. There was no aggression, no threat, only pure, raw need. She trusted him somehow, to save her babies. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped outside, the freezing air biting at his face. He knelt beside the pups and gently touched one of them. Their bodies were cold, almost stiff, but he could feel the faintest hint of warmth beneath their icy coats. They weren't gone yet. "All right," Ethan muttered under his breath, more to himself than to the wolf. "Let's get you all inside." He scooped up the two pups carefully, cradling them in his arms while the mother wolf struggled to stand. She followed him weakly as he carried the pups into the cabin, leaving trails of snow behind her. Once inside, Ethan laid the pups on a pile of blankets near the fireplace. He turned to the mother wolf, who stood hesitantly in the doorway, unsure whether to enter. Ethan gestured for her to come in, speaking in a calm, steady voice. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I'll do what I can." The wolf hesitated for a moment longer before stepping inside. She shook off the snow clinging to her fur and lay down beside her pups, her head resting protectively over them. Ethan closed the door to keep the cold out and went to work. First, he stoked the fire in the stove, making sure the room stayed warm. Then he fetched some heated stones from the hearth and wrapped them in cloth, placing them around the pups to gradually raise their body temperature. As he worked, he kept glancing at the mother wolf. She watched him intently, her ears twitching at every sound he made. Her presence was both comforting and unnerving. Comforting because she seemed to trust him completely, and unnerving because he couldn't shake the feeling that she understood exactly what he was doing. It was as if she knew he was trying to save her pups and she was counting on him. Hours passed and Ethan didn't stop working. He checked the pups' breathing repeatedly, adjusted the blankets, and even used an old thermometer to monitor their progress. Slowly, Ever so slowly, they began to show signs of life. One of them let out a faint whimper, its tiny legs twitching slightly. The mother wolf perked up immediately, lifting her head to sniff at her pup. A low growl rumbled in her throat, not threatening but protective. "It's okay," Ethan reassured her, keeping his voice gentle. "They're going to be all right." But deep down, he wasn't entirely sure. These pups were so small, so fragile. Even if they survived the night, there was no guarantee they'd recover fully. Still, Ethan refused to give up. Something about the mother wolf's determination inspired him. She had brought her dying children to a stranger in the middle of nowhere, trusting him to help them when she had no other options left. He owed it to her to try. By morning, the pups were showing more signs of improvement. They were still weak, but their breathing was steadier, and their little bodies felt warmer to the touch. The mother wolf hadn't moved from her spot beside them, watching over them like a guardian angel. Ethan sat back in his chair, exhausted but relieved. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond fixing broken machines or helping villagers. He had saved lives, tiny, innocent lives, and it felt good. As the sun rose over the snowy landscape, casting a pale light through the windows, Ethan looked at the wolf family curled up together by the fire. He smiled faintly, wondering what strange twist of fate had brought them to his door. Little did he know this was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the world and his place in it. The next few days passed in a blur for Ethan. He spent most of his time caring for the wolf pups, ensuring they stayed warm and fed. The mother wolf remained by their side, rarely leaving the spot near the fireplace where her babies lay recovering. She watched Ethan closely, her golden eyes following his every move. Though she never spoke or made any sound beyond the occasional low growl, Ethan could feel her gratitude. It was as if she understood that he was doing everything he could to help. Feeding the pups proved to be one of the biggest challenges. At first, they were too weak to eat on their own, so Ethan had to improvise. He mixed warm water with powdered milk, creating a makeshift formula, and used a small syringe without a needle to feed them drop by drop. It was slow and painstaking work, but Ethan didn't mind. Each time one of the pups managed to swallow, a little more, he felt a small surge of hope. Slowly, their tiny bodies began to regain strength and their movements became less sluggish. The mother wolf seemed to approve of his efforts. Whenever Ethan approached the pups, she would lift her head slightly, sniffing the air as if to check what he was doing. Once satisfied, she would settle back down, her tail thumping lightly against the floor in what Ethan interpreted as a sign of trust. Over time, she even started interacting with him more. One morning, when Ethan was working on repairing an old lantern, he noticed her nudging something toward him, a piece of frozen meat she must have brought from outside. It wasn't much, just a scrap, but it was clear that she meant it as a gesture of thanks. Ethan smiled and set the meat aside. "You don't have to do that," he said softly, though he knew she wouldn't understand his words. Still, he appreciated the effort. In some ways, it felt like they were forming a bond, a silent understanding between two very different beings. As the days went by, the pups grew stronger. They began to squirm and wiggle, their tiny legs kicking against the blankets. Sometimes they would let out soft whimpers or yips, their voices growing louder and more confident. Ethan found himself smiling more often than he had in years. There was something about their resilience, their will to survive despite the odds, that filled him with a sense of wonder. He couldn't help but admire the mother wolf too, who never gave up on her children no matter how hopeless things seemed. But there was something else weighing on Ethan's mind, something he couldn't quite explain. Ever since the night the wolves arrived, he'd been having strange dreams. In these dreams, he saw a vast icy plain stretching endlessly before him, lit by eerie glowing lights that danced across the sky. He heard whispers in a language he didn't recognize, and he felt a presence not threatening but ancient and powerful. When he woke up, the images lingered in his mind, vivid and unsettling. At first, Ethan dismissed the dreams as a result of stress and lack of sleep. After all, taking care of two sick pups and their mother was no easy task. But the dreams kept coming, night after night, each one more intense than the last. One particular dream stood out above the others. In it, Ethan found himself standing in front of a massive structure buried beneath layers of snow and ice. It looked like a machine, but unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, as though alive with energy. As he reached out to touch it, a wave of warmth surged through him, filling him with both awe and fear. When Ethan woke up from that dream, his heart was racing. He sat up in bed, staring into the darkness of his cabin. Was it just his imagination playing tricks on him, or was there something deeper at play? He glanced over at the corner of the room where the wolves slept. The mother wolf was awake, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment their gazes locked, and Ethan felt a strange connection, as if she knew exactly what he had been dreaming about. The next morning, Ethan decided to test a theory. He grabbed a notebook and sketched the machine from his dream as best as he could remember. He drew its intricate patterns and glowing lines, trying to capture every detail. When he finished, he showed the drawing to the mother wolf. She sniffed at the paper cautiously, then looked up at him with an expression that seemed almost approving. Her tail wagged slightly, and she let out a soft bark. Encouraged by her reaction, Ethan began paying closer attention to the mother wolf's behavior. He noticed that whenever he worked on his sketches or tinkered with tools, she would sit nearby, observing him intently. Sometimes, she would place her paw gently on his arm, as if urging him to keep going. It was almost as if she wanted him to build something, or perhaps recreate the machine from his dream. One evening, as Ethan sat by the fire sketching, the mother wolf did something unexpected. She stood up and walked over to him, pressing her nose firmly against his hand. Ethan froze, unsure of what to do. Then, suddenly, a flood of images rushed into his mind. Visions of icy landscapes, glowing lights, and strange machines buried under layers of snow. The sensation was overwhelming, like being pulled into someone else's memory. He gasped and stumbled backward, nearly knocking over his chair. The mother wolf stepped back, watching him carefully. Her ears were perked up and her tail swished slowly behind her. Ethan stared at her, his heart pounding. Had she really just shared those images with him? If so, how was that even possible? Wolves weren't supposed to be able to communicate like that, or were they? Shaking off his disbelief, Ethan focused on the images still lingering in his mind. They were clearer now, more detailed than they had been in his dreams. He could see the machine from his sketches, but this time it was surrounded by other devices, all humming with a strange energy, and there was something else, a sense of purpose, as if these machines were meant to heal and protect life. Ethan realized that the mother wolf hadn't come to him just because her pups were dying. She had brought them to him because she believed he could unlock the secrets of those machines. Somehow she knew he had the skills to figure it out. Whether it was instinct, intelligence, or something far beyond human understanding, Ethan couldn't say. All he knew was that he had to try. Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into his work with renewed determination. He gathered scraps of metal and wires from his workshop, piecing together prototypes based on the designs in his sketches. The mother wolf stayed close, offering quiet encouragement with her steady gaze. Even the pups seemed to take an interest, crawling around, his feet and chewing on loose ends of wire. It wasn't easy. Many of his attempts failed, leaving him frustrated and exhausted. But each failure brought him closer to understanding the mysterious technology. He started noticing patterns in the way the machines were constructed, realizing that they operated on principles far beyond anything he had studied in engineering school. It was as if they were designed not just to function, but to harmonize with the natural world around them. One afternoon, as Ethan worked on a particularly tricky component, the mother wolf let out a sharp bark. Startled, he turned to see her, standing by the door, her tail wagging excitedly. She barked again, then trotted outside, stopping only to glance back at him expectantly. Ethan hesitated, unsure of what she wanted. But when she barked a third time, he grabbed his coat and followed her. The cold hit him like a wall as he stepped outside, the wind biting at his cheeks. The mother wolf led him through the snow-covered forest, her paws crunching softly against the ground. They walked for what felt like hours, the landscape growing increasingly desolate. Finally, they reached a secluded valley hidden deep within the wilderness. What Ethan saw there took his breath away. Buried beneath layers of ice and snow were remnants of alien machinery, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. It was exactly like the machine from his dreams and his sketches. The mother wolf stopped beside him, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. She looked up at him, her golden eyes shining with a mixture of hope and urgency. Ethan knelt down, running his fingers over the smooth surface of one of the devices. It hummed, softly under his touch, responding to his presence. A wave of realization washed over him. This was why the mother wolf had sought him out. These machines weren't just relics of a forgotten civilization. They were tools capable of saving lives. And now it was up to him to figure out how to use them. As they stood there together in the icy silence, Ethan felt a profound sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be difficult, full of challenges he couldn't yet imagine. But with the mother wolf by his side, guiding him every step of the way, he knew he could face whatever came next. Ethan spent the next several days exploring the hidden valley, studying the alien machines buried beneath the ice and snow. The mother wolf stayed by his side, her presence a constant reminder of the trust she had placed in him. She seemed to know exactly which parts of the machinery were safe to touch and which ones weren't, guiding him with subtle movements of her head or paws. Together, they worked in an unspoken partnership, each step bringing Ethan closer to understanding the mysterious technology. The machines were unlike anything Ethan had ever encountered. They didn't look like ordinary tools or devices. Instead, they seemed almost alive, glowing faintly with a soft blue light that pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing. Some of the components appeared damaged, their surfaces cracked or covered in frost, while others hummed steadily, radiating warmth even in the freezing cold. Ethan quickly realized that these machines weren't just random artifacts. They were part of a larger system, designed to interact with one another in ways he couldn't fully comprehend yet. He began taking notes, sketching diagrams, and experimenting with small pieces he could carry back to his cabin. Each trip to the valley revealed something new. Strange symbols etched into the metal, intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, and mechanisms that responded to his touch with bursts of energy. It was overwhelming at times, but Ethan refused to give up. He felt driven by a sense of purpose, knowing that unlocking the secrets of these machines could mean saving not only the wolf pups, but perhaps countless other lives as well. Back at the cabin, Ethan worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of the alien technology and combining them with tools and materials he already had. The mother wolf often sat nearby, watching him intently. Sometimes she would nudge certain items toward him or paw at specific parts of his workbench, as if offering silent advice. Her instincts seemed uncanny, almost as if she understood the machines better than he did. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at her intelligence. Was it possible that she had encountered these devices before, or was there some deeper connection between her and the technology? As the days passed, Ethan noticed subtle changes in the wolves' behavior. The pups, now fully recovered, were playful and energetic, bounding around the cabin and tugging at his boots with their tiny teeth. They seemed to have accepted him as part of their pack, treating him with a mix of curiosity and affection. Even the mother wolf, who had initially been cautious and reserved, began showing signs of growing trust. She started spending more time inside the cabin, lying near the fire and occasionally resting her head on Ethan's lap as he worked. It was a gesture of friendship, one that made Ethan feel both honored and humbled. One evening, as Ethan tinkered with a particularly complex piece of machinery, the mother wolf did something unexpected. She stood up suddenly, walked over to him and placed her paw gently on his hand, stopping him mid-task. Ethan looked up, puzzled, and met her gaze. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dim light, filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. For a moment nothing happened. Then, without warning, a flood of images rushed into Ethan's mind, visions of icy landscapes, glowing lights in the sky, and strange creatures moving among the snow-covered ruins. These weren't ordinary memories. They felt ancient, as if they belonged to someone or something else. Ethan saw flashes of towering structures surrounded by swirling energy fields, heard echoes of melodic sounds that resonated deep within his chest. Most striking of all, he saw glimpses of the machines themselves, not as they were now, but as they had once been, fully operational, humming with power, and connected to a vast network that spanned across the frozen wilderness. When the vision ended, Ethan gasped for air, his heart racing. He stared at the mother wolf, who stood calmly beside him, her tail swishing slowly behind her. What was that?" he whispered, though he knew she wouldn't answer. But the look in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. These machines weren't just tools. They were part of a greater purpose, one tied to the very fabric of the land and its inhabitants. Determined to uncover more, Ethan redoubled his efforts. He began testing different combinations of components, trying to replicate the effects he had seen in his visions. One night, after hours of trial and error, he managed to activate a small device he had assembled using parts from the alien machinery and his own tools. The device emitted a soft glow, pulsing gently in time with the hum of the machines in the valley. Ethan held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Then, to his amazement, the glow expanded, enveloping the room in a warm, soothing light. The mother wolf let out a low growl, her ears perked up in alertness. The pups, who had been sleeping in the corner, woke up instantly and began wagging their tails excitedly. Ethan felt a surge of energy course through him, filling him with a sense of clarity and focus he hadn't experienced before. It was as if the device had tapped into something primal, connecting him to the natural world in a way he couldn't explain. He realized then that these machines weren't just about healing physical wounds. They were about restoring balance, bridging the gap between life and the forces that sustained it. Over the following days, Ethan continued experimenting, refining his designs and learning how to control the energy emitted by the devices. With each success, his confidence grew. He tested the machines on smaller tasks first, using them to repair broken tools or enhance the warmth of the fire. But he knew the true test would come when he applied their power to living beings. And so one evening he decided to try something bold. The weaker of the two pups still showed signs of lingering weakness, despite having recovered significantly. Its movements were less fluid than its siblings, and it often lagged behind during playtime. Ethan carefully positioned the pup near the activated device, ensuring it was safe and comfortable. The mother wolf watched anxiously, her body tense with anticipation. Ethan took a deep breath and adjusted the settings on the machine, focusing its energy directly onto the pup. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The pup lay still, its eyes half closed as if unsure of what was going on. Then slowly, a change became apparent. The pup's breathing steadied, its fur smoothed out, and its entire body relaxed. After a few minutes, it opened its eyes wide, letting out a joyful yip as it scrambled to its feet. It ran around the room, faster and stronger than ever before, chasing its sibling and playfully nipping at its heels. The transformation was remarkable and undeniable. Ethan exhaled sharply, a wave of relief washing over him. He turned to the mother wolf, who let out a series of happy barks, her tail wagging furiously. She pressed her nose against his cheek, a clear sign of gratitude. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that went beyond the satisfaction of solving a problem. He had done it. He had harnessed the power of the alien technology to heal. But this was only the beginning. As Ethan looked at the glowing device in front of him, he realized its potential extended far beyond helping a single wolf pup. If he could refine the technology further, he might be able to use it to aid other animals or even people. The thought excited him, but it also filled him with a sense of responsibility. Such powerful tools came with risks, and Ethan knew he had to proceed carefully. That night, as Ethan sat by the fire, reflecting on everything that had happened, the mother wolf curled up beside him, her pups nestled snugly against her belly. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly connected, not just to the wolves, but to the world around him. The harsh Alaskan wilderness no longer felt isolating. Instead, it seemed alive with possibilities. He glanced at the mother wolf, who gazed back at him with unwavering trust. "Thank you," Ethan murmured softly, knowing she wouldn't understand his words but hoping she'd feel the sincerity behind them. In return, she rested her head on his knee, closing her eyes contentedly. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the promise of challenges yet to come. But for now, in the warmth of the cabin, surrounded by the family he had unexpectedly gained, Ethan felt at peace. Little did he know, the journey ahead would take him to places he never imagined, and reveal truths that would change his life forever. The days that followed were a mix of excitement and hard work for Ethan. He spent most of his time refining the alien device, testing its limits, and learning how to use it safely. Each success brought him closer to understanding its full potential, but it also raised new questions. How had these machines come to be buried in the frozen valley? Who or what had created them? And why had the mother wolf led him to them? These thoughts lingered in the back of his mind as he worked, but he pushed them aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The mother wolf seemed to sense his determination. She stayed close, her golden eyes always watching, her presence a constant source of encouragement. Sometimes she would bring him small gifts, a piece of fur, a shard of ice shaped like a crystal, as if to remind him that she was grateful. Ethan appreciated the gestures even though he didn't fully understand their meaning. It was clear that she saw him not just as a helper, but as part of her family now. One morning, as Ethan prepared to head back to the hidden valley to gather more pieces of the alien machinery, he noticed something unusual. The mother wolf stood by the door, her tail wagging excitedly, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, peeking cautiously from the edge of the forest, were several other wolves. They looked different from her, leaner, with scars on their faces and bodies, but they shared the same wary yet hopeful expression. Ethan froze, unsure of what to do. Wolves rarely approached humans willingly, especially in groups. But the mother wolf stepped forward, barking softly to get his attention. When he turned to look at her, she glanced back at the others, then back at him, as if urging him to follow. Taking a deep breath, Ethan grabbed his coat and stepped outside, careful to move slowly so as not to startle the newcomers. The group of wolves led him deeper into the forest than he had ever gone before. They moved silently, their paws barely making a sound against the snow. Ethan followed closely behind, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. After nearly an hour of walking, they arrived at a clearing surrounded by tall trees. In the center lay a young wolf, its body battered and broken, struggling to breathe. Its companions stood nearby, their heads low, their eyes filled with sadness. Ethan knelt beside the injured wolf, examining its wounds carefully. It had been caught in some kind of trap, its leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood stained the snow around it, and its breathing was shallow and labored. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled out the alien device he had been carrying in his backpack. He activated it, adjusting the settings to focus its energy on the injured wolf. The device hummed softly, emitting a warm glow that enveloped the animal's body. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the wolf's breathing steadied, and the swelling around its leg began to reduce. Its eyes fluttered open, and it let out a weak whimper. The other wolves gathered around, their tails wagging slightly as they sniffed at their recovering companion. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling a surge of pride. This was proof that the machine could help others, not just the mother wolf's pups, but any creature in need. As the injured wolf regained strength, Ethan realized something important. The mother wolf hadn't brought him here just for her own family. She had trusted him enough to share his gift with others, to extend his abilities to those who couldn't ask for help themselves. It was a profound act of faith, one that made Ethan feel both honored and responsible. He knew then that he couldn't keep this discovery to himself. If he could use the alien technology to heal animals and perhaps even people, he had a duty to do so. Over the next few weeks, Ethan transformed his cabin into a makeshift sanctuary. He built shelves to store tools and supplies, cleared space for injured animals to rest, and set up a corner where he could continue experimenting with the alien devices. Word spread quickly among the local wildlife, not through words, of course, but through instinct and behavior. Wolves, foxes, and even birds began showing up near his cabin, bringing injured members of their packs or flocks for him to treat. Ethan worked tirelessly, often staying up late into the night to care for his patients. The mother wolf remained by his side throughout, helping him whenever she could. She acted as a bridge between him and the other animals, calming them when they were scared and guiding them to the right spot for treatment. Her presence was invaluable, and Ethan often found himself wondering how he had ever managed without her. But the influx of visitors also brought challenges. Some animals were too far gone to save, no matter how advanced the alien technology was. Others required treatments that Ethan hadn't yet figured out how to perform. There were nights when he sat by the fire staring at the glowing device, wondering if he was doing enough. The weight of responsibility sometimes felt overwhelming, but the mother wolf was always there to remind him why he was doing it. A nudge from her nose or a soft bark was all it took to lift his spirits and push him forward. As time went on, Ethan began noticing changes in himself. He had always been a solitary person, content to live alone in the wilderness. But now he found joy in the company of others, even if those others were wolves, birds, and other creatures. The cabin, once quiet and empty, was now filled with life. The pups played together in the corner, chasing each other and tumbling over blankets. Birds perched on the windowsill, chirping cheerfully as they watched Ethan work. Even the mother wolf seemed happier, her golden eyes shining with a warmth that hadn't been there before. One evening, as Ethan sat by the fire, reflecting on everything that had happened, he realized something important. He wasn't just healing animals, he was healing himself too. For years he had carried a sense of loneliness and isolation, believing that his skills were only useful for fixing machines or helping villagers with practical problems. But now, he saw that his abilities had a deeper purpose, one that connected him to the world in ways he never imagined. The mother wolf seemed to sense his thoughts. She walked over to him and rested her head on his knee, her tail swishing gently behind her. Ethan reached out and scratched her ears, smiling softly. "You've changed my life," he said quietly, knowing she wouldn't understand his words but hoping she'd feel the gratitude in his voice. In response, she let out a low growl, not threatening but comforting, as if to say, "And you've changed ours." That night, as Ethan drifted off to sleep, he dreamed again of the glowing lights in the sky and the ancient machines buried beneath the snow. But this time, the dream was different. Instead of feeling overwhelmed or confused, he felt a sense of belonging, as if he were part of something much bigger than himself. When he woke up the next morning, he knew exactly what he needed to do. Ethan decided to return to the hidden valley, this time with the mother wolf and her pups accompanying him. He wanted to explore the site further, to see if there were more machines or clues about their origins. The mother wolf seemed eager to go, leading the way with confidence. As they trekked through the snow-covered forest, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come together. What had started as a desperate plea for help had turned into a partnership unlike anything he had ever experienced. When they arrived at the valley, Ethan immediately noticed something new. Parts of the alien machinery that had been buried under layers of ice and snow were now exposed, as if someone or something had been working on them while he was away. The glowing symbols etched into the metal pulsed brighter than before, and the hum of energy in the air was stronger. Ethan knelt down to examine the changes, running his fingers over the smooth surface of one of the devices. It felt warm, too, the touch, almost alive. The mother wolf stood beside him, her tail wagging slightly. She barked softly, drawing his attention to a cluster of smaller machines scattered around the area. Ethan recognized them instantly. They were similar to the device he had been using at the cabin, but these were intact, untouched by damage or decay. He picked one up carefully, studying its intricate design. It was lighter than he expected, and when he activated it, it emitted a steady glow that filled the entire valley with warmth. Ethan's heart raced with excitement. With these new devices, he could expand his efforts even further. He could travel to nearby villages and offer his help to people in need, not just animals. He could teach others how to use the technology responsibly, ensuring that its power was used for good. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly hopeful about the future. As he packed the devices into his backpack, the mother wolf let out a series of happy barks, her pups bouncing around her feet. Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection to the family he had gained. Together, they headed back to the cabin, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did he know, the journey was only beginning, and the secrets of the alien technology would lead him to discoveries beyond his wildest dreams. Ethan's days became a whirlwind of activity as he embraced his new role as both healer and protector. The alien devices he had brought back from the Hidden Valley proved to be even more powerful than he had anticipated. Each one was like a key, unlocking abilities that seemed almost magical. He could mend broken bones with a touch, ease the pain of old wounds, and even revive animals on the brink of death. Word of his work spread quickly, not just among the wildlife, but among the human villagers too. At first, Ethan kept his efforts focused on helping animals. He treated injured foxes, mended the wings of birds, and nursed sickly caribou back to health. But it wasn't long before people began showing up at his cabin door. Some came seeking aid for their livestock, a cow with a lame leg or a horse, struggling to breathe. Others arrived with personal injuries, a hunter who had twisted his ankle in the snow, a fisherman whose hands were cracked and bleeding from hours spent in icy water, or a child suffering from a persistent fever. Ethan hesitated at first, unsure if the alien technology would work the same way on humans as it did on animals. But when he tested it cautiously, the results were miraculous. One evening, a young woman named Lily knocked on his door. She lived in a nearby village and had traveled miles through the snow to reach him. Her face was pale, her lips chapped from the cold, and she clutched her side tightly as though trying to hold herself together. Ethan ushered her inside, where the warmth of the fire helped thaw her frozen body. When she finally spoke, her voice was weak but urgent. "My brother," she said. "He fell off a cliff while hunting. His leg is shattered and no one knows how to fix it. Please, can you help?" Ethan looked at her, torn between doubt and determination. He had never used the alien device on such a serious injury before, let alone on a human. But he couldn't turn her away. Not when she had come so far, not when someone's life depended on it. Nodding slowly, he told her he would do what he could. Together, they set off toward her village, the mother wolf and her pups trailing behind them. When they arrived, Ethan found Lily's brother lying on a makeshift bed of furs, his leg wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. The man groaned in pain, sweat dripping down his face despite the freezing temperature. Ethan knelt beside him and carefully unwrapped the bandages, revealing the extent of the damage. The bone had pierced through the skin, leaving an open wound that looked infected. Without treatment, it would only get worse. Taking a deep breath, Ethan activated one of the alien devices. Its soft glow filled the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The villagers gathered around, their faces a mix of hope and skepticism. Ethan focused the energy onto the man's leg, adjusting the settings as he went. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the swelling began to reduce, and the jagged edges of the broken bone started to realign themselves. The man let out a sharp gasp, his eyes flying open as the pain subsided. Within minutes, the wound had closed, leaving behind only faint scars. The villagers erupted into cheers, hugging each other and thanking Ethan profusely. Lily threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "You saved him," she whispered. "Thank you." Ethan smiled faintly, though he felt a pang of unease. He knew the villagers saw him as some kind of miracle worker, but he didn't feel like one. He was just a man doing his best with tools he barely understood. Still, he couldn't deny the impact his work was having. As news of his success spread, more and more people began traveling to his cabin, bringing their sick, injured, or dying loved ones. It wasn't just locals anymore. Strangers from distant towns and villages made the journey, braving the harsh Alaskan wilderness in search of help. The influx of visitors changed Ethan's life in ways he hadn't expected. His once quiet cabin became a bustling hub of activity, filled with laughter, tears, and stories of survival. The mother wolf adapted remarkably well to the constant flow of people, her presence serving as both a comfort and a guardian. She seemed to know instinctively who needed reassurance and who required space. Sometimes she would sit beside a frightened child, letting them bury their face in her fur. Other times, she would stand protectively near Ethan, ensuring no one got too close while he worked. Despite the chaos, Ethan found joy in the connections he formed. He learned names, heard tales of hardship and resilience, and saw firsthand the strength of the human spirit. There was Clara, an elderly woman whose arthritis had left her unable to knit, the one thing she loved most in life. After using the alien device to ease her pain, Ethan watched as she picked up her needles again, her fingers moving deftly over the yarn. And there was Sam, a boy who had been born blind. Though Ethan couldn't restore his sight completely, the device improved his vision enough for him to see shapes and colors for the first time. The look of wonder on Sam's face stayed with Ethan long after the family had left. But with every success came challenges. Supplies dwindled quickly, forcing Ethan to make frequent trips to nearby towns to restock. The alien devices required energy to function, and though they drew power from the natural world around them, Ethan worried about overusing them. What if they ran out of energy? What if something went wrong? These questions haunted him, keeping him awake at night. Yet whenever doubt crept in, the mother wolf was there to remind him of his purpose. A nudge from her nose or a gentle bark was all it took to steady his resolve. One day, as Ethan worked on repairing a damaged device, the mother wolf did something unexpected. She led him outside and stood by the edge of the forest, her ears perked up, and her tail wagging slightly. At first, Ethan thought she wanted to go for a walk, but then he noticed movement in the trees. A group of wolves emerged, their bodies lean and scarred, their eyes wary but hopeful. Among them was an older wolf, his fur streaked with gray, limping heavily on 3 legs. Ethan recognized the older wolf immediately. It was the alpha male of a pack that roamed the mountains. He had seen him once before, during one of his early explorations of the wilderness. Back then, the wolf had regarded him with suspicion, keeping his distance. Now, however, he approached Ethan without fear, lowering his head in a gesture of respect. Ethan knelt down and examined the wolf's injured leg, which had clearly been broken and poorly healed. Activating one of the devices, he focused its energy on the injury. The wolf flinched at first, but soon relaxed as the pain faded, and his leg straightened. When the treatment was complete, the alpha male stood tall, testing his weight on the newly healed limb. He let out a low growl, not threatening but approving, before turning and disappearing into the forest with his pack. Ethan watched them go, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. This wasn't just about healing individuals. It was about restoring balance to the ecosystem, giving animals and humans alike a chance to thrive. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan realized that his work had created something extraordinary, a bridge between species. The villagers, who had once feared wolves and other predators, now saw them in a new light. They understood that these creatures were not enemies but allies, sharing the same land and facing the same struggles. In return, the animals seemed to trust humans more, coming closer to settlements without aggression. It was as if the alien technology had awakened a forgotten harmony, reminding everyone of their place in the natural order. Yet amidst all the progress, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover. The dreams of glowing lights and ancient machines continued to haunt him, growing clearer and more vivid with each passing night. He began to suspect that the devices he had discovered were only fragments of a larger system, one designed to connect not just living beings but entire worlds. The mother wolf seemed to share his curiosity, often leading him back to the hidden valley, urging him to dig deeper. One afternoon, while exploring the valley, Ethan stumbled upon something extraordinary. Beneath a thick layer of ice, he found a massive structure, a dome-like building made of the same shimmering metal as the smaller machines. Its surface pulsed with energy, glowing faintly even through the frozen barrier. Ethan's heart raced as he realized what this meant. The alien technology wasn't just scattered pieces. It was part of a network, a web of interconnected systems, waiting to be reactivated. With the mother wolf by his side, Ethan began clearing away the ice, working tirelessly until the entrance to the structure was revealed. Inside, he found rows of consoles and panels, glowing softly in the dim light. Symbols floated above the surfaces, shifting and changing like living things. Ethan reached out tentatively, touching one of the panels. Instantly, the room lit up, filling with a hum that resonated deep within his chest. Images flashed before his eyes, scenes of planets, stars, and civilizations he couldn't recognize. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. The mother wolf barked softly, drawing his attention back to reality. Ethan stepped away from the console, his mind racing with possibilities. He didn't fully understand what he had found, but he knew it was important. More importantly, he knew he couldn't keep it to himself. Whatever secrets lay within this structure, they belonged to everyone, to humans, to animals, and perhaps even to beings beyond Earth. As he left the valley that evening, the mother wolf walked beside him, her golden eyes shining with pride. Ethan's life had transformed in ways he never could have imagined. What began as a quiet existence in the Alaskan wilderness had turned into a journey of discovery, healing, and connection. His cabin, once a solitary refuge, had become a sanctuary for those in need, both humans and animals alike. The alien technology he had uncovered was no longer just a tool. It was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of hope in a harsh and unforgiving land. Yet as much as Ethan had accomplished, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to learn, more to uncover about the machines and their origins. The mother wolf remained his constant companion, her presence a guiding force in his life. She seemed to understand things that even Ethan couldn't fully grasp, often leading him back to the hidden valley or nudging him toward certain parts of the alien structure. Her instincts were uncanny, almost as if she carried memories of the technology from another time, or perhaps another life. Ethan didn't question it. He trusted her completely, knowing that whatever path she set them on would lead to something meaningful. One evening, as Ethan sat by the fire sketching new designs for the alien devices, the mother wolf stood abruptly and walked to the door. She barked softly, her tail wagging impatiently. Ethan looked up, puzzled. "What is it?" he asked, though he knew she wouldn't answer. Still, her message was clear. It was time to go somewhere. Grabbing his coat and flashlight, Ethan followed her into the night. The snow crunched underfoot. As they made their way through the forest, the air was crisp and cold, the stars above twinkling like tiny lanterns. The mother wolf led him deeper into the wilderness than usual, her movements purposeful and steady. After nearly an hour of walking, they arrived at a clearing Ethan had never seen before. In the center stood a group of wolves, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Among them were several injured animals, a moose with a broken leg, a fox with a deep gash across its side, and a bear cub limping painfully. They looked up at Ethan expectantly, their expressions filled with trust and desperation. Ethan knelt beside the first animal, activating one of the alien devices. As he worked, the mother wolf moved among the injured creatures, calming them with gentle nudges and soft growls. It was clear that she had brought him here not just to heal these animals, but to teach others how to care for each other. By the time the sun rose over the horizon, every creature in the clearing had been treated, their wounds mended and spirits lifted. The wolves barked in gratitude, their tails wagging furiously, before disappearing into the forest with their young ones. Ethan watched them go, his heart swelling with pride. This was what the alien technology was meant for, to heal, to connect, to restore balance. But as he turned to leave, the mother wolf stayed behind, staring at him with an intensity that made him pause. She let out a low growl, then stepped forward and pressed her nose against his chest. Suddenly, a flood of images rushed into his mind. Visions of icy landscapes, glowing machines buried beneath layers of snow, and strange beings moving gracefully among the ruins. These weren't ordinary dreams. They felt real, as if he were witnessing events from another time. When the vision ended, Ethan stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. The mother wolf stood calmly beside him, her golden eyes shining with wisdom. He realized then that she hadn't just led him to the alien technology, she had chosen him to carry its legacy. She believed in him, trusted him to use it wisely, and share its power with others. Determined to honor her faith, Ethan redoubled his efforts. He spent long hours experimenting with the alien devices, refining their functions and learning how to adapt them for different purposes. He taught villagers how to operate the simpler machines, ensuring they could continue his work even when he wasn't around. Word spread far beyond Alaska, reaching people in distant cities and towns. Some dismissed the stories as legends, while others traveled great distances to see the miracle worker for themselves. As winter gave way to spring, Ethan noticed subtle changes in the world around him. The forests seemed healthier, the rivers clearer, and the skies brighter. Animals roamed freely without fear, and humans lived in harmony with nature, respecting its rhythms and boundaries. It was as if the alien technology had awakened something ancient, restoring balance to the land and all who called it home. One day, as Ethan explored the hidden valley again, he discovered something remarkable. Beneath the massive dome-like structure, he found a series of symbols etched into the ground, forming a perfect circle. When he stepped inside the circle, the entire room lit up, filling with a warm, golden light. Images appeared before him, scenes of planets, stars, and civilizations, working together in unity. A voice echoed in his mind, soft yet powerful, speaking words he couldn't understand but somehow comprehended. It was a message of gratitude, of acknowledgement, and of responsibility. Ethan emerged from the structure with tears in his eyes, overwhelmed by what he had experienced. He returned to the cabin, where the mother wolf greeted him with a joyful bark. She seemed to know what had happened, her tail wagging furiously as she nuzzled his hand. That night, as they sat by the fire, together Ethan felt a profound sense of peace. He knew now that his journey was far from over, that there were still mysteries to solve and connections to forge, but he also knew he wasn't alone. Over time, Ethan became more than just a healer or an engineer. He became a guardian of the wilderness, a protector of both human and animal lives. People from all walks of life came to him seeking guidance, not just in using the alien technology, but in living harmoniously with the world around them. Villagers built shelters near his cabin, creating a small community dedicated to preserving the natural order. They planted trees, cleaned rivers, and cared for injured animals, inspired by Ethan's example. The mother wolf remained at his side. Throughout, her bond with him growing stronger with each passing day. She was no longer just a guide or a companion, she was family. Together, they continued exploring the hidden valley, uncovering more secrets about the alien technology and its creators. Each discovery brought them closer to understanding their purpose, not just as individuals, but as part of something greater. Years passed, and Ethan grew older, his hair streaked with gray and his hands calloused from years of hard work. But his spirit remained youthful, fueled by curiosity and compassion. The mother wolf aged too, her once sleek fur now dotted with patches of white. Yet she remained as strong and wise as ever, her golden eyes still shining with determination. One winter morning, as snow blanketed the landscape, Ethan woke to find the mother wolf standing quietly by the door. Her posture was calm, almost serene, but there was a finality in her gaze that made his heart ache. He followed her outside where the pups, now grown into majestic adults, waited patiently. Together they led him to the edge of the forest, stopping only when they reached a grove of towering pine trees. The mother wolf turned to face Ethan, her tail wagging slowly. She pressed her nose against his cheek one last time, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. Then without hesitation she stepped into the forest, disappearing among the trees with her pups close behind. Ethan stood there for a long time, watching until their forms vanished entirely. Though his heart was heavy with loss, he felt no sadness, only gratitude for everything she had given him. Back at the cabin, Ethan sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The memories of their journey together played vividly in his mind. The desperate night she had brought her frozen pups to his door, the countless lives they had saved, and the bond they had forged against all odds. He smiled softly, knowing that her legacy would live on, not just in him but in everyone whose lives she had touched. From that day forward, Ethan dedicated himself to sharing her story. He spoke of the mother wolf's courage, her wisdom, and her unwavering trust. He told anyone who would listen that true strength lies not in domination but in connection, not in isolation but in unity. And as he spoke, he saw her spirit reflected in the eyes of those who listened, carrying her message forward into the future. In the heart of the Alaskan wilderness, where the snow never stopped falling, Ethan Carter continued his work, guided always by the silent wisdom of the mother wolf. Together they had bridged worlds, healed wounds, and awakened forgotten truths. Though she was gone, her presence lingered in every act of kindness, every gesture of compassion, and every moment of harmony between humans and nature. And so, in the quiet embrace of the wilderness, an incredible partnership blossomed. One that defied logic, transcended species, and hinted at secrets waiting to be uncovered beyond the stars.